In 2012, someone gave me a book titled 1,000 Gifts. A number of my friends had read that book and found it made a big difference for them. It's a book on gratitude. At the time, I had had chronic depression. I had been working with doctors and counselors off and on for years. And so when I heard people talking about this book and doing the gratitude practice, I felt hopeful. I read it, I put it into practice, and nothing changed. Why did it work for them and not for me? Nothing changed, except I actually felt a little more discouraged. My family growing up was very negative. Anybody else in the room have a negative parent? Usually there's one or two. Yeah. My parents, who've both passed, did the very best they could. My dad fought in Vietnam. He came home when I was 3, and alcoholism and depression settled in and stayed with him for 50 years. My mom had her own addictions to cigarettes, food, and telling people what to do. She was perpetually frustrated that people didn't listen to her good ideas and do what she said. So her way of handling that was complaining. Complaining was a daily activity in our home. You can probably guess what I learned to do early on. Complain. I complained my way to college. I complained my way to adulthood. I complained my way into multiple jobs. But I had no awareness of that. It's interesting because complaining is a bit like bad breath. You notice it when it comes out of someone else's mouth, but not so much when it comes out of your own. It changed for me once I learned what complaining was and the effects that it had on me. Let me tell you clearly that the opposite of gratitude is complaining. Gratitude is about what is present and what is working. Complaining is about what is wrong and what is missing. So when I read that book in my 40s, my complaining level was up here, and my gratitude was down here, and I did that gratitude practice and raised this a little bit, but it wasn't enough to move the needle, the level of happiness in my life. But once I learned about complaining, that changed everything. And that is my passion, and that is my mission, is to help people learn how to communicate in ways that build connection and create connection in their life. So by the end of my talk today, you're going to know 4 things. You'll know the definition of complaining. You'll know the devastation that complaining causes. You'll know the 5 main reasons that people complain. And more importantly, you will know steps that you can take to get rid of complaining in your own life. Does that sound good? Yeah, with me. I want to introduce you to my mentor, Will Bowen. Will is the founder of A Complaint-Free World. You can find that online, complaintfreeworld.org. Will was a pastor at a church in Kansas City, and he taught a class to about 250 people back in 2006, and he developed a 21-day challenge for them. 21 consecutive days of no complaining was the challenge he presented to the people in his class. At that time, there was a popular movement called Livestrong. Do you remember Livestrong? And they had yellow bracelets like this? Yep, I had one too back then. And he was trying to think of a way to help people really tangibly notice and catch themselves and be aware of complaining coming out of their own mouths. And so he used the idea of the bracelet. The difference is that this is not a cause bracelet. Wearing this does not mean I support a complaint-free world and positivity. This is a mindfulness tool for you to use to retrain yourself. It takes about 21 days to create a new habit. And so this mindfulness tool will help you develop a habit of no complaining. It's pretty easy. You put the bracelet on one wrist. When you catch yourself complaining, you take it off and you move it to the other wrist. I said the word easy. This is what it looks like. I put the bracelet on. I catch myself complaining. That was day one, but I'm back to day one. And then next day I'm at day one again. Next day I'm at day one. Maybe I make it to day two, but I probably go back to day one again. It takes the average person, the data that Will's collected, 4 to 8 months to make it to 21 consecutive days without complaining. Isn't that interesting? Will created this movement, and since 2006, he has given out 15 million of these bracelets. Last year, he sent out 100,000 worldwide. Why does this topic resonate? It resonates for 2 reasons. There is too much complaining in the world. If you agree, say yes. Yes. And the second reason is the world isn't the way we'd like it. Do you agree? Say yes. Yes. The interesting thing is that these two are correlated. When we complain about what's wrong, we get more of what is wrong. Let's define complaining. Complaining is express grief, pain, or discontent. What word is in yellow? Express. Yes. Complaining needs to be spoken to be complaining. If you're just thinking thoughts of negativity, you can't really control that as well. There are some overachiever, ambitious people that get one of these bracelets, and they will say, I'm going to move my bracelet with every negative thought. Well, good luck with that. We have about, on average, 45,000 thoughts in a day. How do you think more are positive or negative? The research shows more of them are negative. The average person complains 15 to 20 times in a day. So that's a little more doable. Speaking the complaint is the definition. This is an important concept. It is not complaining to ask directly, to speak only and directly to the person who can resolve your issue. It is not complaining to speak directly and only to the person who can resolve your issue. This is a key concept, especially if you lead a team, because you may be the person that your team member needs to talk to resolve a situation. But sometimes people come up to us and they speak to us and they whine about what is wrong, or they're angry saying what needs to be fixed. So it's important to recognize that if you are the person that can help resolve the issue, they are asking for accountability, and you are the person to help. Now, why do they come up and communicate in that whiny or aggressive voice? Well, this is a, by the way, freebie for today. It's because when they were kids, that worked. With their parents, when they were asked to do something they didn't want to do, or something wasn't happening the way they wanted, they could go to their parents and they would whine and say, or they'd be angry, and they would get what they wanted. And so people carry that pattern into adulthood. Don't let that distract you. That may not be complaining, even though it sounds like it. Eckhart Tolle has a great quote that points to this issue. Complaining is not to be confused with informing someone of a mistake or a deficiency so that it can be put right. And to refrain from complaining does not necessarily mean putting up with bad quality or bad behavior. There is no ego in telling the waiter that your soup is cold or needs to be heated up, if you stick to the facts, which are always neutral. If you stick to the facts, which are always neutral. How dare you serve me cold soup? That is complaining. Complaining carries a negative energy with it. How dare you? How dare you do that to me? That is complaining. Oh. Yep, that's where I wanted to go. There's a lot of costs to complaining. The first cost is that it costs you money, especially to organizations. I do have some statistics. This is from Dr. Steve Patchen. 78% of employees waste 4.5 hours per week complaining to coworkers on the clock. Listening to coworkers complain is included in that. So both the speaking and the listening. 4.5 hours. So the average in the United States rate that employees are paid by hour is $32 an hour. So if you multiply 32 by 4.5 hours per week for 50 weeks, workplaces are paying about $7,000 a person to support listening to or speaking complaining. It costs money. 1 out of every 10 employees quits because of complaining coworkers or bosses. And we all know it's expensive to replace employees if you've ever been part of the hiring process. On average, it's about $15,000 nationwide to replace someone. Knowledge workers are a lot more. They're $60K to $120K to replace in a year. I think, though, the most costly, beyond the dollars, is when there's a complaining culture in a workplace, who are the people that quit? It's the positive ones, the ones that don't want to be in that environment. So then what do you have more of? The complainers. And that's costly too. Complaining is a competitive sport. Have you ever noticed that complaining goes in higher degrees of severity? There's a story about a group of people standing together and they're just chatting, and someone walks in with a little bit of a limp. Someone says, "Hey, is everything okay? What's going on?" Yes, I woke up in the middle of the night. I stubbed my toe. The nail's black. It might fall off. And then someone in the group says, "Oh, a few years ago, I stubbed my toe in the middle of the night. I tripped, twisted my ankle, and was on crutches for 6 weeks." And then someone else in the group says, "Well, I have an uncle who once woke up in the middle of the night, stubbed his toe, fell, hit his head on the coffee table, and died." Now, if it had happened in the reverse order and the first person said, "I have an uncle who got up in the middle of the night, stubbed his toe, fell, hit his head on the coffee table, and died," and then someone else in the group said, "I recently stubbed my toe and the nail turned black and it hurts," you'd be like, "What is wrong with you? Don't you know how complaining works?" Complaining goes in higher degrees of severity. It is a competitive sport. Complaining keeps you focused on the problem. My favorite story to illustrate this is about 2 construction workers on the job. They go to lunch together, and the first guy, opens his lunchbox, looks in, and he says, "Oh, no, And his buddy asked him, "What's wrong?" He said, "Oh, it's a meatloaf sandwich. I hate meatloaf." And his buddy says, just doesn't really say anything, shrugs, goes about his lunch. The next day, they sit down together. First guy opens up his lunchbox, looks in, he says, "Oh, again." His buddy says, "What's wrong?" He says, "It's a meatloaf again." Third day, they sit down to lunch. First guy looks in, he sees what's in his lunchbox. This time he reaches in and he grabs it and he says, "Meatloaf again! I'm so tired of this." And his buddy asks, "Well, why don't you ask your wife to make something else?" And the first guy says, "I make my own lunch." That's a key concept. We make our own lunch. You make your own lunch every day by the words that you speak and the actions that you take. Complaining keeps us focused on the problem. Complaining damages health. I think it's pretty well spoken about in the media about cortisol, the stress hormone cortisol. That's the biggest issue. Small amounts of cortisol or short-term amounts of cortisol are no big deal. Our body absorbs them and gives us the energy we need to rise to the occasion sometimes. But chronic levels of high cortisol is damaging to our health. It's tied to high inflammation. Research ties it to high blood pressure and to diabetes. With that high inflammation, it also is a contributing factor to heart disease and stroke and all the things that we want to avoid in life. High levels of complaining and negativity damage our health. And then finally, complaining destroys relationships. Think about the times in your life when you've hung around someone with high levels of chronic complaining. You picturing someone in your mind? I'm wondering if, when you think about that conversation with that person, did they drain your energy? Or did you feel a little bit drained when you left that conversation? Probably yes. Many, many people work all day. They go home from work. They're unwinding, relaxing with their partner, and they talk about all the things that went wrong in the workday. They go to bed, they wake up the next morning, go to work, and at work, they talk to their coworkers, and they complain about all the things not going well with their partner. And then they go home and they do it all over again. And it is energy draining on relationships all the way through the cycle. So, what can be done about this? Why do people complain? There's 5 top reasons, and there are helpful responses that we're going to talk about today. How you can help them decrease or stop the complaining that they're sending to you or in the organization. So we're going to talk about those 5 reasons. And it's an acronym called GRIPE. In the United States, GRIPE is a slang term that means complaining. So using the word GRIPE, we'll go over the 5 reasons that most people complain. This is an interactive part. I am going to ask you to say some things back with me. And the reason for that is because I'm not just up here to entertain you today or to fill space in the time of a meeting. I really do want you to take home these concepts and these responses to complainers in your life, because this will make a difference. The first one, the G in GRIPE, stands for get attention. Now I'm going to let you take a turn. The G in GRIPE stands for get attention. Getting attention is a human need. It's a social need. There is nothing wrong with getting attention. That is what we do as humans. We want to interact and connect with one another. So there's nothing wrong with getting attention. The trouble comes in when the form or the way that someone wants to get attention is all centered around complaining. And the people in your life that are coming to get attention with complaining, they typically just start with complaining, and then they have a list of other things. And if you respond to one, or maybe you offer another perspective and you're not joining them in that path of complaining conversation, they might come up with another thing to complain about. And this was what tripped me up, because in my family, we complained was just the way we communicated. And so it was a bid for connection, if you will. I just complained to start conversations and to keep them going. I didn't know anything different. So what do you do when someone comes to you and it's simply a bid for connection or getting attention? Here's the reply. I want you to read this with me. What is going well with, fill in the blank. What is going well with? What is going well with work? What is going well with your job? What is going well with your mom? What is going well with your partner? What is going well with is pretty magical. But the first time you use it, it might not go over well. It might just confuse the person, and then they'll double down on their complaining. So don't be surprised and don't give up. You can listen to that and you can say, oh yeah, I get it. Oof. Well, what is going well with? And you can try that a few times, and one of two things will happen. They'll either shift to talk about more positive things, or they'll get frustrated and stop talking to you. But either way, you win, because it stopped the steamroll of complaining. The G in gripe stands for get attention. The R in gripe stands for remove responsibility. People complain to get off the hook. If something's asked for them that they don't want to do or they don't feel like they can do well, they respond with complaining. Remove responsibility. This one is really common, and you've probably heard something along the lines of, I would like you to do, and then someone comes back and says, well, I'd really like to do that, but that but negates everything that came before it. And they have reasons why they can't. They're not equipped. The circumstances aren't what they need. When you're responding to someone who's trying to get off the hook, you want to help them stay on the hook. And here's what you say. Say this with me. If it were possible, how might you do it? We're going to say it again, and I want you to emphasize the underlined word. If it were possible, how might you and not me, how might you do it? Key parts to that phrase. It's interesting because if you say, if it were possible, you're taking it into the future, you're brainstorming it together, that can help unlock people who are trying to get off the hook doing something that they don't feel like they can do well. All right, I want you to say these three with me as you're learning them. The G in gripe stands for get attention. The R in gripe stands for remove responsibility. Great. The I in gripe stands for inspire envy. All right. The reason that it's inspire envy is because there's no B in this word, but that really is brag. Brag. Inspire envy. People like to complain to brag, because bragging directly, saying what's going well, saying all the things that are successful, doesn't go over well. Sometimes people find that rude, or it just doesn't go well in social situations, but it does go well. A lot of people complain. So you can complain, or someone can complain to inspire envy. And the story that resonates this most in my life is I was in a group, a study group of women one year, and we met once a week. And in the course of that year, pretty early on, one woman and her husband bought a house. They bought a $3 million house. How do I know that they bought a $3 million house? Because she would say things like, Well, you know, if you buy a $3 million house, you would think that the screen door on the back would work. She also said, you know, if you buy a $3 million house, you would think that the sprinkler system would be working. She also hired an interior designer that she spent $45,000 on. How do I know that? Because she said, if you spent $45,000 on an interior designer, you would think she'd be able to pick the round area rug that fit in the room. People complain to brag. They complain because they want to make themselves look better in comparison. One place you can see this is out on 183 or on the highway near you. There's two types of drivers on the highway. There's the fast and the furious driver, and there's the dazed and confused driver. And they both call each other idiots. Yep. And they're making themselves look good by comparison when they're complaining. What do you do when someone's complaining to inspire envy or to brag? You compliment the opposite. Say that with me. Compliment the opposite. This can show up in the workplace in this way. We have a team meeting on regular, same time every week. Everybody's there sitting around the table, but there's one empty seat. Julie's not there. She often arrives late. Tom is sitting there and he says, Julie's not here again. She's always late. Is that giving us new information? No. We can all see that the seat is empty and that Julie is late again. So he's not saying it to give us that information. Tom is telling us that so that we can notice that he is on time. So if you were that team lead, you would say, Tom, you know what I appreciate about you is how you show up to meetings on time, and that makes a difference. Compliment the opposite. The G in gripe stands for get attention. The R in gripe stands for remove responsibility. The I in gripe stands for inspire envy. And say the P with me. The P in gripe stands for power. People complain to gather power. That's how our political process works here in the United States. It's centered around complaining. They want to get people on their side by complaining about what's going on. Social media and the news does the same thing. There's a show on Netflix called The Social Dilemma, where researchers and a team, the documentary brought in people that had worked for the social media companies, and they asked them, how do you scale? How did you approach growing your company, the speed and the way in which you did? And the common thread of all of that is, on the social media platforms, we bring people in with their interests, and then we start the complaining. We start the negativity, because they're on our site longer and they spend longer on the different messages. Another way, well, let me tell you the solution to the power first, and I'll talk about it. This is what you say when there is, I think I will give the example in the workplace first. In the workplace, you might see this power play using complaining show up this way. There's two top dogs, two people that want to have more power in the office, and they want to bring people to their side. They want your allegiance. And one way they get allegiance is by complaining about the other person. They want to persuade you to be on their side, and your attention and your buy-in is your power. And they are giving you complaints for that power. And so this is how you handle that when you have a top dog or someone complaining to you to build an allegiance. You say back to the complaining, it sounds like the two of you have something to talk about or a lot to talk about. I want you to say that with me, and we're going to stress the word you. Ready? Go. It sounds like the two of you have a lot to talk about. The two of you, not me. That's key to that one. People complain for power. This is our last, the last one is the E in gripe stands for excuse poor performance. Now the fascinating thing about this one is excuse poor performance is the reverse of remove responsibility. Remove responsibility is about something that they don't want to do in the future. Excusing poor performance is around asking someone to do something, they've done it, but they've blown it in some way. And they complain so that they can not be held accountable for that. And they'll complain about other people that got in the way or that messed up. They'll complain about circumstances that got in the way. There's all kinds of forms of complaining to excuse bad behavior. Excusing poor performance, though, is a tricky one. And the response that you will have that is effective is how do you plan to improve next time? Because talking about what is already in the past raises defensiveness. You might feel compelled to say, well, didn't you factor that in? Didn't you plan for that? Couldn't you have planned for that? Why didn't you think of that? That happened last time. That causes defenses to go up. But if you say, and the focus is on the next time, how do you, not me, see that? How do you plan to improve next time? That can keep the conversation going and help them get off that complaining and then to learn for next time. So the complaint-free challenge. That is, if you didn't pick up a bracelet, they're on the table outside, so you can pick one up. I hope that you will try this out. I hope that you will, because I wouldn't be up here talking about this if I wasn't passionate and if I didn't believe that this makes a difference in your life and in the lives of the people that you interact with and communicate with. And so I encourage you, when you hear a complaint come out of your mouth, you switch from one wrist to the other. And like I said, give yourself some time, be very kind about it. No, you don't snap it on your wrists. Doing violence to yourself is not how you change your habits for the better. You simply switch from one wrist to the other. I do caution you, though, not to become a complaining cop, okay? Especially if you see each other next time you come to Purpose Works with that and you hear someone complaining, don't say, maybe you want to move that. No. This is a tool for you to catch your complaining patterns and to break that habit. Before I close, I'll go over the 3 most common questions that I get. First question is, how do we get more bracelets? I need bracelets for my team, for my school classroom or my Sunday school classroom. I want bracelets for my family. Can I get some of these? The answer is yes. You can take a photo of this, send me an email, I can help you get them. We have adult sizes and child sizes. The second question I get is, how do I get this information? I wasn't able to take notes on all of it, and Will has created this easy to download and print handout about gripe, and I'd be happy to send that to you. So send me an email and request the PDF download. And then the third question I get is, we want you to come and speak to our team or speak to our group. And yes, I do that. I do professional speaking for a living. I also do work with a handful of coaching clients around communication, interpersonal communication and leadership presence. And so if you're interested in that, send me a message. Will started with that one class in 2006. In 2007, he was interviewed on the Oprah Winfrey Show. After the camera went off and the lights dimmed, Oprah reached out and touched Will's arm and said, "You know, Will, I don't complain." And Will just looked at her, and in his head he thought, "Of course you don't. You're Oprah Winfrey. one of the richest, most successful people in the world, what do you have to complain about? Now, he didn't say that out loud, but he did roll his eyes, and she saw him. And he said, Oprah said, "You missed the point. I don't have everything that I have, so I don't complain." Oprah said, "It's because I don't complain that I have everything that I have." That's because Oprah gets it. Oprah knows that she makes her own lunch. She knows that when she is intentional about what comes out of her mouth and the actions that she takes, she makes her own lunch. And you have that same power by the words that you say and the actions that you take. Create a magnificent buffet and share it with our world.